Welcome to Challenging the Norm, his and hers look at life and business, hosted by Paul Snell and Lindsay Burden. This podcast is designed for solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, and business owners redefining success on their terms. Each episode dives into the topics that truly matter, offering a blend of candid discussion, practical insights, all delivered with a sense of humour. We reality check the latest business trends while offering a fresh perspective that challenges conventional thinking. Paul partners with business leaders, leveraging cutting-edge neuroscience to demonstrate how people-centered strategies drive transformational success. While Lindsay brings her unique approach to business coaching, empowering ambitious business owners to achieve financial abundance and a lifestyle rich in time and joy, all without compromising what matters most. Together, we are challenging the norm. So grab a coffee or your beverage of choice and join us as we explore the art of creating a life and business you love. Well, hello, Paul, and welcome to another episode of Challenging the Norm. And I've got a bit of a bee in my bonnet, but before I get to that, how are you? You're looking very suntanned.
I am feeling great, Lindsay. I have to say, I'm not going to overemphasize this too much during this episode, but it is incredibly nice to be sitting somewhere warm with a glass of whatever drink you prefer. Mine was a glass of white wine, and enjoying the sun for a week. So I've come back raring to go. This is going to be a fantastic episode. I think you've got a great topic here. So looking forward to it.
Well, and it sort of links to you going away on holiday, sort of. So I was saying that I recently went to see my beautician, who I've known for, I don't know, nearly 30 years. And we were talking about all the things that were going on and happening in my life. And she said, well, what do you do for me? What do you do for you? She said, but what's your me time? I was like, oh, don't be so blinking ridiculous. And actually, I didn't say blinking at all, as you can imagine. I haven't got time for me. I'm running here, I'm running there. Everything's falling apart. I don't know. And I've got a business to run, don't you know? And so we had a bit of a laugh and a joke about it. And she was saying what she did. And she said, you really need to find something for you. And of course, we all need something. But it really stayed with me, Paul. And it stayed with me because what happened shortly after that appointment was I went into that spiral of, I've got to do something. I've got to cram more time in. I've got to find time. I've got to cram some, I don't know, a spin class in somewhere. Or I've got to start doing yoga or something. What have I got to do? And I went into this real panic. Then I went into this place of real sadness that there was nothing left for me. And then that night, sat around the dinner table, my mum happened to be with us. So it must have been a Tuesday night because I know what's happening on Tuesday night because she's here. And the whole family was on top form. We were laughing, we were joking, the kids were doing impressions. And I sat there and I just drank it all in and I went, this is my me time. This is what fills me up. This just sat here chatting, having fun, eating, being together. But it's really got me thinking about one, me time. What else can we cram into our busy days already? And what me time means health, well-being. And we know it's important. But I think for me, I just felt suddenly this added pressure that now I've got to really find some me time. I don't quite know where I'm supposed to find it, Paul.
Well, there's a whole plethora of issues around that, isn't there? I mean, look, I think there's a couple of things here. One is it's hard enough being a small business owner. It's hard enough doing that full time. And then I think there's a second element to this. And I sort of have a little bit of a bee in the bonnet about it myself when it comes to what we nicely call work-life balance. I've had a bit of because, listening to you, I hear similar things that I tend to see everywhere, social media, you name it. And that is a pressure to have something that is recognized as me time.
Yes.
That is generalized as me time. In other words, do you go and do yoga, or do you go for a walk, or do you sit and do some mindfulness? These are all things that I think society in general see as an acceptable thing to do for me time. But I think there's a problem with that because me time is very, very subjective. What
Mm.
is me time for you might not be me time for me. And I think we have to recognize that. Otherwise, we fall into that trap that you've just described. If, for example, yoga is the thing, and I've just picked on yoga, it may not be. If yoga is the thing to have for me time, I'm going to fail miserably. I don't do the yoga thing, and nothing wrong with that, but it's not my me time. It's a bit like in the business world, and not very sexist. I'm going to be sexist a bit here. In general, more so in the past than now, but I've seen it recently a couple of times. With men, it's golf,
Yes.
and I don't play golf, and I cannot abide golf.
I
Now,
won't tell my husband you said
I
that.
know, I know. Sadly, in the world of business, quite often it's, oh, Paul, come for a round of golf and we'll talk about X, Y, and Z, or here's the next thing we'll work on. Come and have. And I cannot think of anything worse than playing golf. Now, might make me a bit of an anomaly in that, but nonetheless, that's where this idea that a perceived norm, me time is walking around this golf course, hitting a ball that never goes where you want it to go. And so you end up walking, goodness knows how many miles, that's supposedly joyful and doesn't in any way, shape, or form fills me full of joy. So again, we're pressured into living up to an expectation. And I don't think that's right. It's absolutely, particularly when we're faced with questions. So what is your me time? If then we're going, well, I don't know, does it mean I need to do spinning classes or do I need to go and join a club? And all of a sudden there's pressure, huge pressure to accommodate that.
I was speaking to a new client this morning, and it just so happened that she mentioned, that she should do more for herself, health and well-being and everything. And I know she won't mind me using this too. She thought she'd start a spin class, go to a spin class. She said by the time she dropped the kids off, got there, done that, come home, had showered, she'd lost half a day.
Yeah.
So then the pressure is like, oh, now I've got to catch up. And then we're in that catch up mode, which is a really dangerous place to be because we don't focus, we find it hard to be productive, we're suddenly doing everything and anything. So this whole thing around, we know health and well-being is really important. And I've interviewed people from my YouTube channel before, and I think one of the really big things that always comes across from those experts that I choose to speak to and listen to, they always say, start really small.
Mm.
So years ago, one of the things I realized was actually one thing I could do for my health and well-being was drink more water. It was that simple. So for every coffee I make, and I make a lot of coffee, I have a glass of water. I also recognize that I wasn't, I'm not, don't get me wrong, I love food, but I can't be arsed with it. I need it put on a plate and delivered to me. So I'm not, I don't, I might go all through the day and not eat anything. Don't send me any messages. I know it doesn't work for everyone, but it's okay for me.
Yeah.
But I thought, do you know what? That's not great. So I started to just have a bowl of really lovely Greek yogurt. Other yogurts are available, and some nutty granola. And that's what I pretty much have and have done for 3, 4 years now. So we have to, we're looking for the small things. And I think this big change stuff that we're so desperately always looking for or feel that we need to look for, and it's in life and in business, too often in looking for the big stuff, we forget the tiny small shifts that we can make in our business, like blocking out half an hour at lunchtime to just sit and have that lunch. But I don't think we can tell everyone to just go and do that either, because for some, that blocking out half an hour would throw them into anxiety because now they're missing out half an hour. And what's that going to? You've got to explore these things and try what works. I think if we can just look for the little stuff, the small shifts, it would make such a difference.
In fact, that's a little bit of gold there because we preach this idea all the time that in business, it's the small changes you make over a period of time that have the greatest impact. It's about consistency, right?
Yeah.
Small things regularly. That definitely would apply to having me time, and it applies in two ways. One is you don't feel overwhelmed at a big chunk of your day disappearing. So, the example of blocking out a lunch and a lunch hour or even 30 minutes might seem too much, but a 10-minute walk might not.
Mm,
And I can absolutely tell you, 10 minutes walking is enough to reset.
yeah.
But I think there's a second point to that, and the second point is you talk about just reflect on what happens in your day. The small things, the small wins. The small wins in business include being able to breathe for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
They're a small win, right? And it can be a 10-minute walk. It can literally be go and water the flowers,
Yeah.
right? It's, lots of research has been done that shows if you can lift yourself up out of the environment you're in other words, not at your desk,
Yeah.
lift yourself up out of the environment you're in just for 5 minutes, it has a huge benefit. And so I just wanted to emphasize that because we talk a lot about small steps consistently in business to achieve the things you want to achieve. The same applies in
Yeah.
me time. And the second part is your me time will be different to my me time.
Yeah.
Don't forget to reflect on that.
I think there's another piece, and it's so interesting. I'm sure I've mentioned it before, but I have on occasion and twice in the last 8 days suggested to clients that they create themselves a timetable like they would have in school.
Yeah.
Because if we don't allocate time to the things that we need to do and give time purpose, we will use it up. We will use it up on anything. And I think this comes as well because we've got to be busy. We've got to be busy. Always got to be doing. And that means that we will find anything and everything to keep adding. I mean, how many people do you know, Paul, or have met who say they do things and add them to the list so they can
Oh,
tick
yeah.
them off?
Yep.
Nuts.
Yep.
Now,
Yep.
there is a slightly different version to this. I have a client who does 90-day planning with me, and sometimes, on occasion, other activities have required her time, and therefore she hasn't been able to give her attention to the priorities that we've chosen ahead of time. So we've added an extra column for those things that she still had to do, and it's quite often client work. We all know how that works. Client work, they change a deadline, something happens, or it might be because X came in. It meant that they couldn't take the next step here, but there was 3 steps they could take. So they've just moved things around, or it's not on the plan at all, as I say, and we add it to the other column. So there are other ways around it, but I just feel that we're so busy at the moment filling our time that we're not using our time wisely. And if we could, we would start to create or carve out time to do other things that we love.
You're right. Excuse me. You are absolutely right. But and now let's throw another. Forget the word to use. We'll throw another stick into the pond. That's a nice one. Never heard of it, but it sounds good. We'll throw another stick into the pond. I think there's almost a never-ending pressure to do more.
Yeah.
I mean, let's just for a brief moment step away from the what is me time and how do I find that. And by the way, all my clients use calendar blocking. I think it's the right thing to do. But a side issue here, if you're listening, calendar blocking is genius. It's not complicated. You just have to be very clear. You have to completely block your diary, and then if you're not using it for that particular time, it's not a problem. But you know what and when you'll be doing things. Anyway, side issue. I think there's almost pressure from two sides. There is and I feel this, there is a pressure to have some sort of well accepted version of me time. We'll call it that. I think I've already expressed my interesting views on golf when it comes to me time. And I think there's pressure from the other side where business pressures put more demand on us to do more, keep doing more. And what we tend to do is go, I can do more, but I just have to sacrifice some of that me time.
Yeah.
And then you go, what that me time you really don't have anyway because
Yeah.
you can afford to have. But the pressure increases and increases. And I mentioned earlier in our preamble about this email that's been publicly shared from the CEO of Fiverr to all of their associates around AI and how they really do need to decide how they're going to accommodate AI into their business or they will lose their business.
Yeah.
And you go, okay, that was a very candid email. It's not necessarily wrong, but the outcome is right. So what you're telling me is what I do, the way I do things now isn't going to be good enough. So I'm going to have to do more to be different, to achieve and to maintain where I am today. Not grow, just maintain where I am. So our mindset quickly shifts into well, that's more important than me going for a walk. And
Yeah.
it's so wrong, I can't tell you. That 10-minute walk is the thing you need to maintain and cope with the pressures that are going to come in business.
Yeah. I think there is another part to this as well. Um, and for any parent, or you can be a carer, because there are and you don't, in fact, you don't even have to be a parent or a carer. There are curveballs coming at us in life and in business constantly.
Yeah.
And I certainly know for myself, and when I've talked to clients, if you're using time blocking, which you and I are huge advocates of, what happens is that, well, I didn't get to do that because I've got a daughter home today, for instance. She's injured her foot, which meant also that, that impacted last week. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
so I gave up that time because I wanted to do these things, whatever it was, whatever that curveball was. And now I've got to do the piece of work I didn't do. And now I've got to do this. And it just
Mm.
snowballs. And now we're feeling that pressure. And I've been talking a lot more to clients. I'm doing it myself and going, do you know what? If I haven't done that, what happened?
Yeah.
If I don't do it, what happens? What's the worst that can happen?
Mm.
Because it goes back to, and I help my clients do this all the time. I go, okay, so we've had some curveballs. Now we need to reprioritize. We need to reset where we're at. And
Mm.
sometimes that's saying, okay, these things or this project, we're going to have to push that out a bit more.
Yeah.
But that's okay. Because otherwise, what we do is we just keep moving everything forward and we just keep pushing and pushing and pushing until there is no room left for a cup of tea, let alone any me time. And I don't drink tea.
No, you're absolutely spot on. But it feels like I believe, because I've been there myself, I think it feels like there is no way out. How is it possible for a one-man business to have the time to do anything other than keep working? It's that classic question when people want to talk about work-life balance and they go, what? As a business owner, what do you mean work-life balance? And then I talk about, oh, well, I'm a big fan of work-life integration. And they go, yeah, that's more like it. But that still doesn't answer the question of where the hell do I find any time to do something that's for me? That, by the way, that's without reflecting on do I do any anyway. I just feel that this is a huge demand in a time when business can be challenging. We fall into that mental mindset that goes, okay, things are really difficult in business for whatever reason. There's always something to
Yeah.
talk about. It can be economics, it can be downturns, it can be AI, you pick it, it doesn't matter. There's always something. So to turn around and go, oh yeah, but things are difficult economically at the moment. Yeah, there's always something. So I I I sympathize. In fact, I empathize with the challenge around understanding me time. But I think it's really important that before we sit down and go, do I need to take up spin classes or whatever it might be, that we really do sit down and define what me time is.
Yeah, because it could be finishing at a certain time and sitting and watching Netflix. Because
Yeah.
if that's your thing, if that's how you relax, you go for it. Don't you listen to anyone that says, wasting your hours away on a box set isn't valuable and could be used a better way. If that's how you switch off, if that's how you relax with somebody, then do it. And I think there is another challenge, and this has been coming up for me lately, and one or two of my clients and others that I speak to. We love what we do.
Mm.
And I have been known to say, just because we love what we do doesn't mean to say we should be always in it. But what I'm noticing is how we're all getting really good actually at going, okay, I need to finish at this time today because I need to do X, Y, and Z. For me, it happens to be the children. And that means that I need to work for a couple of hours in this evening or on a Saturday morning. Now, I'm making a conscious choice there, and no, it's not something you can sustain. That said, for many of us, that is how we're creating that
Mm.
flexibility around our families. And there's a part of me now that, and I had this conversation with someone this morning. I said, "Do you know what? If you want to finish at 3:30 on this day, but you want to do a couple of hours another night
Mm.
just to keep the momentum going, that's a deliberate choice you're making, and you shouldn't feel guilty for that." So I think I'm struggling a little bit with this. We need to take control of our own time. We need to
Mm.
take control of what fills us with joy. But I'm also feeling that we've almost got to this point now where there's so many messages around you must have your boundaries. And yes, you must have boundaries, and habits are really great. But then we feel guilty for when we are creating flexibility in our businesses. So that I'm struggling with a little bit at the moment because I know I'm seeing it and I'm hearing it. And we should be allowed to swap hours around. We should be allowed to do that guilt free.
I agree. And it's a big part of being in business, isn't it?
Yeah.
Being able to, and we go back to, it's not, being in business isn't about, oh, it's easy, if only, right? Being in business is about being able to have that flexibility that you want to have. And that flexibility may mean that you've got to work a couple of hours on Saturday. If Friday afternoon you went, picked the kids up and went down the park, right? It's it's not a question of doing less. It's about being able to do what you need to do and understanding that flexibility is key. So you're absolutely right. There should be no guilt about a decision to work a Saturday morning rather than Friday afternoon. The only time that raises alarm bells for me is when someone says, "Oh, I don't have any time in the week. I just have to keep working at the weekend as well." There are some alarm bells there that go, well, okay, let's look at that. Because and this is great where a coach perspective comes in, because when you're in the middle of something and something that's very personal and can be very emotional, it's really difficult to get perspective. Whereas someone from the outside in can go, hang on a second, let's draw this back to the facts of the situation. And they can see more. They can see a reality. Whereas when you're in there going, oh, I still haven't got this work done. I tell you what, I've worked till 8 p.m. on a Friday. I'll just start again Saturday morning and we'll get it all done. I think we have to be really careful that doesn't, the excuse to do that doesn't become a norm. It needs to become something that is considered a flexibility, but not a norm. And I still believe, hand on heart, still believe it begins with understanding, what does me time mean to you?
Yeah. You're absolutely right. And I think if you can see yourself consistently in the same patterns, now it happens that I regularly work on a Saturday morning because of the flexibility that I like to create in my week. Now, that said, there are times when I've gone, oh, I shouldn't be working on a Saturday, but it takes the pressure off my Monday. It takes the pressure off so I can quite often relax on a Sunday. And
Mm,
actually, some weekends I can't work because we're doing loads of other things and I just get on with it.
mm,
I think there is a real difference here between working for the sake of working. And if you're working till 9, 10 o'clock every night, and then coming back to it in the morning and having to redo it because you were tired, that is not good use of your time.
no.
And I think there's also this piece around if if you're working at the weekend so that you can start with breathing space on the Monday, and then you just ram your Monday with anything but the things you should be doing, so you're back to the same place again, that is not the same as deliberately choosing or making those conscious decisions around how to use your time. So there are some red flags to
Yeah.
watch, but I just want to come back to this me time piece. And what that looks and feels like for different people is absolutely, without doubt, very, very individual. But I was talking to
Mhm.
someone the other day, and we both agreed that we love what we do. And sometimes when it all feels too much outside, the business is the only thing we have control over. So sometimes we choose to be in the business because it's almost like, and I know it, and the person I was talking to, I knew exactly what they meant. You come into the office and you go, and you're in control. It takes all the stress away because you know what's happening and you have that control. Because the minute I walk outside that door, it feels like I have no control over what's going on or what the next curveball is or what the next thing is that's going to come up. So actually, in some respects, working on my business, in my business, is me time because I can control it.
And therein, that's the point. The point is you begin to define what me time is. And for me, for example, me time is I read prolifically.
You are
So
a
there,
prolific reader.
yeah. So therefore, when I go, oh, it's been I don't a whole bunch of things you can pick. But if I've gone through a week of doing lots of admin, or there's been lots of calls, even coaching sessions, that can get quite emotionally draining, right?
Yeah.
Because you put everything into it. So for me, then to be able to pick up my favorite book of the moment is like, whoa, that's just perfect me time. And that book will invariably be about what I do for a living because that's what I enjoy. That's my break. So I go back to the point, and you've described a scenario exactly the same where we need to be really careful that we don't fall into the trap of living up to an expectation of what me time is for other people.
I just want to come down with, his and hers look at life and business. So I just have a little something. So yesterday, I was running around doing stuff for various different people, and there's housework to do and all sorts of things. I mean, the other day, I cleaned out the fridge while I was waiting for the kids to get ready for school. How I managed to fit that into the schedule, I don't know. But I just thought, well, there's a few things I could do at my desk, and then I thought, do you know what? I'm a massive sun worshipper. I was like, the sun's out. My husband was sat out there. I'm just going to get my book and I'm going to read. But I kept having to get up and down, not because I was too hot, but because I was like, oh, I just need to do this. I think women, particularly because of the load that we carry, and I am generalizing, I think it's much harder for us to sit because I went to get up a couple of times. My husband's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, I just want to do this, or I just need to do that, or I just need to check on that." It's like, why? Because we find it really hard to do nothing.
Yeah. And as a general rule, I would agree, and even more so when there is a family to consider. I don't know if that would be a similar case for a single person, male or female, but I absolutely do get the family thing, right? I completely get the family thing, and I'm not going to disagree with women finding that harder. Because again, in general, not 100%, but in general, you do see more of that. Right, I have, we'll call it a family dynamic to manage. And it may not be you're doing everything, but your brain's going now. Have the kids got their lunches? Have they got their PE kits? Whatever it might be. And it might be that they got their lunch and they got their PE kit. It doesn't matter. The brain calories are still being expended on things that come up, even when you're sitting there, I'm going to read my book for 10 minutes.
But I think, no disrespect to any men listening, but I think we also see things. So I went to put some things in the dish. Now I emptied the dishwasher because I needed to put some things in the dishwasher. Now, to be fair, my husband has had a hip replacement. Bending down to empty the dishwasher is not going to go very well for him. So I emptied it and I was emptied the bottom layer and I was like, this dishwasher is filthy. So then I'm scrubbing the inside of the dishwasher and all the seals and everything before I've even unloaded the top section because it needs to be done now. My husband going, what are you doing? I went, have you seen the state of this? I'm surprised our dishes are even. And that's what we do as well, which is how I landed up emptying the fridge because I was doing the lunches, sorting that out, and I was like, this fridge is filthy. So we do it in the moment. And I think that's in some respects why maybe as women we find it quite hard to stay focused in a lane when we're in business because we'll see something and it needs doing, so therefore we do it.
Yes, I'm going to agree, and then I'm going to say, but isn't that part of the discipline to put blocking in place?
It is in business. I think it's harder outside of the business for women.
Okay, so
There is, I haven't blocked time to clean the fridge or the
but yeah,
dishwasher.
but in equally, was it 100% urgent for you to clean the fridge at that moment?
I don't think it was 100% urgent, but in looking at my watch, I was like, I've got 10 minutes before I have to make sure that, and it wasn't, filthy, filthy. I was just,
Yeah, of
and
course.
it was the end of the week. So the shop, I was going shopping, so it was empty.
Yeah.
So actually, yes, it did need to be done in that moment because it was empty. So, but I agree with you. I think time blocking in business absolutely makes a massive difference and, helps us to use our time well. I think outside of that, running a home and all the other things that we do, sometimes when you get that moment, so, it's early in the morning, do I need to go and sit down and meditate for 10 minutes or do I need to clean the fridge?
So the question has to be asked, do you feel, because this is something you're experiencing, do you feel that there is a need for a better way of managing that, or you think that the way you're managing the home stuff is perfectly okay?
Well, it's not often I clean out the fridge, so it's quite a good job. Um, well, actually, I had sort of a similar conversation, which is how we started with my beautician, who said, "Well, you just get a cleaner," and I think that's how many times have I said that? Maybe a cleaner could do it, but there's some real challenges around that because sometimes having a cleaner is I then have to go, or somebody might have to go. If I have a cleaner, what can't I have?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
cleaning is a really good example. It does save us a huge amount of time having a cleaner. I've had one in the past. But also, and I had this conversation with someone recently, the cleaning is quite therapeutic because I go into neutral and
Yeah.
I don't think.
I listen, I think you make some very good points.
Thank you.
Equally, I think there's always scope to find the balance that's right. And if that means getting a cleaner, great. If you find, like me personally, cooking for me is my time. I would cook all the time. If I were young and with no family, I might go into that industry with absolute jumping up and down. So cooking for me is my time. Clearing it up afterwards, not so much my time. And I'm sure that in professional kitchens, there's people that run around and do that. Maybe I need some of them. But the cooking bit for me is an absolute delight. And some people go, "What? I've got friends who go, what do you mean you cook? Why would you cook? That's a dreadful thing. You'd rather sit, wouldn't you want to sit down with a glass of wine and relax?" I go, no, cooking for me is so different to what I do in business. In other words, it's with my hands, it's tactile, it's you're getting very creative with what's in front of you, and it's ingredient based, and there's a whole bunch of outcomes you need to manage, such as does it taste nice? So I think that harps back to that. What is me time? And if me time, I know you're not necessarily saying this, but if me time is, well, actually cleaning makes me turn off and I just get on with it and my brain stops doing that 1,000 mile an hour thing when I'm thinking about business, then great. Don't adhere to what society defines as that's me time, by the way, it's just rubbish. You do what's necessary.
Actually, I have huge satisfaction from cleaning a bathroom. I don't like cleaning a kitchen for some reason, but you know when you clean it and the taps are shiny and
I'm exactly the opposite. I
oh,
will say that, Lindsay. I would rather pay someone ridiculous amounts of money to clean my bathroom, and I would happily clean my kitchen. Isn't it interesting?
see, we are all so different. And I think what we're trying to say, I think what we're trying to say is, you know, just really understand what's important to you and start to recognize what fills you up and what you're starting to see as me time.
Yeah.
And don't feel, the minute you have to squeeze it into a really tight schedule, it's not me time.
No, it's right. And don't adhere to these norms. Don't think you've got to do something big and brash. It can just be small things. And more often than not, that you're already doing them. You're
Yeah,
just not realizing you're doing them.
yeah,
So
yeah.
reflecting is really important. It's that, a coach who mentored me many years ago called it catching raindrops. You have to remember to catch the raindrops. And it
Absolutely.
might be that you're going, do you know what? Oddly, cleaning the toilet is a fun thing for me to do. I would find that incredibly oddly, but nonetheless. And so, when we talk about this, I think reflect on actually what are the things that are your time. And there will be some, there's always some. The only other thing that I'm going to wave as a red flag is don't always think that they're the first thing to sacrifice if you feel pressure. You identify the me time thing and you go, oh, well, me time is reading a book for 10 minutes, going for a walk for 10 minutes. And then there's some pressure in the business and you go, do you know what? They're the easy things to sacrifice. That's a red flag for me.
Unless you're making a conscious decision and there if I look in my diary, so I do meditate and journal and use EFT every morning. Now, last week there were a couple of things, the mornings didn't quite go to plan, so I didn't do them. That was a choice I made because it just took the pressure off. It meant I could get started. But I'm back at it today.
That's the key. There's always going to be exceptions. That's life. There is no such thing as a completely clear run of the mill. If you ever watch a Truman Show as a film, you'd see that's how it ends up is chaos anyway. But there is no perfect balance. There's always the need to be flexible. But the key, as you've just said, is you go back to it. It
Yeah.
doesn't become always.
And it doesn't mean either that you can't change your mind because our circumstances will change. Things will evolve. Just like in your business, you might start out as the doing everything, wearing all the hats, and then you bring in someone who can do your social media, or now you can afford to have your accountant. It's all the same in life.
Mhm.
I'd like to think at some point my children will leave home and I will have more spare cash and I can have all the things that I want. And maybe I'll go to the gym. I don't know. But I think we're so in that. Well, it's that feeling of I'm just denying myself. You're not. Our circumstances, our environment, so many things. So find your raindrops
Yeah.
and trust that time will change and time will pass and your raindrops can get bigger.
100%. That's exactly what you need to do. How about that?
Have we done that? Okay.
Timing's good. Time is good. The
Brilliant.
wisdom and advice is in place. It's been a great subject, this, and I think it is incredibly timely when there are so many pressures out there. And I love the idea of flexibility. It's one of the encouraging points of having your own business. I know at times we talk about the pressures of being having your own business, but there's also the opportunity for flexibility. But it's flexibility, right?
Yeah.
So I think great subject, Lindsay. So much more to come on this type of stuff. And in fact, if I look back at the last 3 or 4 episodes, there is a theme. There is a theme about reality. There's a theme about the everyday, the
Yeah.
stuff for small business owners, or even in general, just living life every day. We're seeing more of a theme in that, and I love this idea that we get to touch on areas that are everyone's experiences.
Yeah, and I hope that we give people an insight into, we're all feeling it.
Mm,
We're all doing it and we're all trying to find our way.
yeah.
And that's just part of this brilliant journey that we're all on.
It certainly is. On that note, we'll say goodbye until next time.
Next time, Paul.